Let me ask you about something that is a painful truth, and that is the fact that tens of thousands of Gazans have been killed since this began, and many of them are innocent people. The hospital's been obliterated. There are bodies everywhere. Obviously, it's no longer functional. You say this is necessary to eradicate Hamas, but I do wonder, when you talk about inconvenient truths, how does Israel justify killing so many innocent people?
A tough question for Israeli spokeswoman Tal Heinrich following news that the Israeli Defense Forces carried out 3 back-to-back drone strikes that killed international humanitarian aid workers with the World Central Kitchen. Nearly 32,000 people have been killed in the Palestinian territory since the start of this insanely brutal war on October 7th. 2/3 of those slaughtered consist of women and children. So to me, what stands out about how Heinrich responded to Burnett's question was just how lazy Israel has been in coming up with better talking points to justify the mass slaughter of innocent people. They just keep resorting back to the same tired statements that trigger collective eye rolls among the international community and increased rage from me.
To take Hamas's numbers with a huge spoon of salt, not a grain of salt, because what I can tell you the facts and the truth according to our assessment and the facts that we have, and that is that we eliminated more than 13,000 Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists. We took out 19 of the Hamas battalions out there.
Wrong. That's a lie, and she knows it. In fact, last weekend, Israeli publication Haaretz spoke to members of the IDF who say that the number of Hamas militants killed is likely around 9,000, not 13,000. But even that lower number has been called into question because the IDF classifies every male they kill as a terrorist. They write that a host of reserve and standing army commanders who have talked to Haaretz cast doubt on the claim that all of these were terrorists. They imply that the definition of terrorist is open to a wide range of interpretation. It's quite possible that Palestinians who never held a gun in their lives were elevated to the rank of terrorist posthumously, at least by the IDF. In practice, a terrorist is anyone the IDF has killed in the areas in which its forces operate, says a reserve officer who has served in Gaza. One senior officer in Southern Command also told Haaretz that, quote, "It's astonishing to hear the reports after every operation regarding how many terrorists were killed. You don't need to be a genius to realize that you don't have hundreds or dozens of armed men running through the streets of Khan Yunis or Jabalia fighting the IDF. It's not that we invent bodies, but no one can determine with certainty who is a terrorist and who was hit after entering the combat zone of an IDF force." In addition to this reporting, veteran Israeli diplomatic correspondent and CNN political analyst Barak Ravid basically shared some pretty fascinating details from his own reporting about IDF operations. Take a look.
To call it a misidentification or a mistake, that's the understatement of the century, okay? And this is not an isolated incident. The reason that we talk about it here is because it's WCK, it's a very well-known and famous NGO, but those incidents happen every few days in Gaza.
We've seen this throughout this entire experience.
Exactly. This is not how a professional military conducts its operations. And for years, the IDF was considered, not only here in the US, but in the West overall, as a very professional military. Just a few weeks ago, 3 Israeli hostages that managed to escape their captors were killed by Israeli soldiers who fired at them, even though they were holding a white flag, okay? And I spoke to an Israeli reserve officer who was in the same unit of those soldiers who shot those hostages. And I remember him telling me that the orders are basically from the commanders on the ground is just shoot every man in fighting age.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
Shoot every man in fighting age. Who cares whether they're terrorists or not? So please, tell me why I should take a lying propagandist like Heinrich seriously while rejecting the likely underestimated death toll reported by the Palestinian Health Ministry. And I say underestimated because the health ministry's numbers don't include Palestinians who remain trapped under the rubble of buildings America's 2,000-pound bombs were dropped on. And honestly, even if it were true that Israel took out 12 to 13,000 Hamas militants out of the 32,000 people who have already been killed, that still means that Israel is confessing to slaughtering 20,000 innocent people in just 6 months. How the hell would that help Israel rehab its image? It's amazing. Perhaps the laziness in Israel's public relations campaign stems from the sense of entitlement the United States government has encouraged for our Middle East ally. Israel can do no wrong. Even when they're committing war crimes, they're doing nothing wrong. And if Israel intentionally fires 3 back-to-back drone strikes that end up killing aid workers from several different countries, you can bet your ass the obvious war crime will be reclassified as Israel's right to defend itself, as John Kirby did.
Is firing a missile at people delivering food and killing them not a violation of international humanitarian law?
Well, Israelis have already admitted that this was a mistake that they made. They're doing an investigation. They'll get to the bottom of this. Let's not get ahead of that. Your question presumes at this very early hour that it was a deliberate strike, that they knew exactly what they were hitting, that they were hitting aid workers and did it on purpose, and there's no evidence of that. I would also remind you, sir, that we continue to look at incidents as they occur. The State Department has a process in place. And to date, as you and I are speaking, they have not found any incidents where the Israelis have violated international humanitarian law. And lest you think we don't take it seriously, I can assure you that we do. We look at this in real time.
They have never violated international humanitarian law ever in the past 5 to 6 months.
I'm telling you, the State Department has looked at incidents in the past and has yet to determine that any of those incidents violate international humanitarian law.
That was disgusting. So according to John Kirby, by the way, shooting at starving Palestinians who were surrounding humanitarian aid trucks, remember that happened not too long ago, didn't break international war crimes or international laws, according to John Kirby, right? Not a problem at all. The collective punishment of starving Palestinians by refusing to allow sufficient humanitarian aid into the region, not a war crime, according to John Kirby. By the way, the strikes, the drone strikes in question were intentional. Anyone who says otherwise is lying to you, intentionally so. The 3 trucks in the convoy were clearly marked, as you can see here, with the charity's logo. The World Central Kitchen plays by the IDF's rules and coordinates with Israel's military, so Israelis know exactly where their convoy is as they attempt to deliver aid to starving Gazans. But the IDF thought maybe they saw one armed man in the convoy, and that unfounded speculation was enough for them to strike the convoy, not once, but 3 times to ensure everyone was killed for good measure. In other words, the IDF felt it was totally fine to kill a group of innocent people on the slight possibility that one person was an armed terrorist. Among those killed was a dual US-Canadian citizen, an Australian woman, a Polish man, 3 British nationals, and a Palestinian driver, all innocent people. The IDF flaunts its war crimes with impunity. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, regularly boasts about ignoring weak demands from the Biden administration. And in turn, Biden rewards him with billions of dollars in weapons transfers, including one worth roughly $2.5 billion this week alone.
The decision follows a visit by Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to Washington this week. The new arms package is meant to include 1,800 of the most destructive bombs used in Gaza.
The United States has quietly approved and delivered more than 100 separate foreign military sales to Israel since October 7th. That includes thousands of munitions, small diameter bombs, buster bunkers, small arms, and other types of lethal aid.
You know, there was a time in America when our government at least had the ability to feel some degree of shame or embarrassment over war crimes. Now they defend Israel as its military carries out atrocities regularly. I remember back in 2007, US troops slaughtered civilians and 2 Reuters journalists in Baghdad in what is now known as the Apache helicopter scandal. Americans were left in the dark about the extent of our military's brutality towards civilians until years later, when in 2010, Chelsea Manning leaked video of the horrific incident to WikiLeaks. In the video, an Apache helicopter unleashes fire on a gathering of 10 men. Among them were 2 Reuters journalists, both of whom, by the way, were murdered in this attack. The attack either maimed or killed the men, and a van of first responders arrived to assist the wounded. Much like the IDF's decision to carry out a second and third drone strike on the humanitarian aid convoy as workers tried to flee to safety, the army fired on the van with first responders. The driver was killed and his 2 children were wounded. The video leaked by Manning also included the soldiers' flippant and cruel communications, which demonstrated a disregard for human lives, including one in the American crew shouting or starting off with a laugh and then saying, "I hit him." Another responds a little later, "Oh yeah, look at those dead bastards." After ground forces arrive and the children are discovered, the American crew blame the Iraqis. Sounds familiar. Well, it's their fault for bringing kids into a battle, says one. That's right, says another. Manning, who worked in the army as an intelligence analyst, leaked the video and hundreds of thousands of other pieces of classified information, which was then published by Julian Assange on WikiLeaks. The leak was so embarrassing for the United States military that the Obama administration decided to throw the book at Manning. Assange has also been targeted by the US and is currently fighting attempts by the Justice Department to extradite him for criminal prosecution here in the States. Of course, Obama excused the war crimes committed by the Bush administration because he wanted to look forward and not backward. But Manning paid a hefty price for revealing what our government didn't want us to know, that our military had done something terrible and indefensible in Iraq. It was a huge scandal. Manning was arrested that same year and faced 22 charges, including aiding the enemy, a capital offense. Manning was subjected to inhumane pretrial conditions for months. She was later sentenced to 35 years in prison. But in 2017, then President Obama commuted all but 4 months of Manning's remaining sentence. Turns out killing 2 Reuters journalists used to be considered a huge scandal, worthy of weeks and weeks of coverage and condemnation. Israel's war on Gaza has already resulted in the deaths of around 100 journalists. Intentionally targeting civilians used to be an atrocity worthy of condemnation, worthy of a lengthy news cycle in which the condemnation plays out. Now the murder of civilians is justified by our government, as long as they falsely blame the slaughter on Hamas, using them as human shields, right? That's the other talking point. John Kirby lies to our faces to defend some of the cruelest crap I've ever seen, and he does it regularly. It makes me sick. While I don't condone withholding information from Americans about how our military behaves at war, I just want you to think about why they did it. I can't help but feel rage over the fact that our government went from understanding how bad intentionally killing civilians was to openly making excuses for atrocities on behalf of Israel. I guess I take some solace in knowing I'm not alone in feeling that way. Palestinian American doctor Thayer Ahmed, for instance, walked out of a meeting with President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And honestly, who can blame him?
We are not satisfied with what has taken place. There has been no concrete steps. But keep in mind, we're very concerned about the people that are over in the Gaza Strip, that are in Palestine right now, who are not just starving, but are facing the threat of a looming Rafah invasion. And so I was able to share that with the president and let him know that out of respect for my community, out of respect for all of the people who have suffered and who have been killed in the process, I need to walk out of the meeting. And I want to walk out with decision makers and let them know what it feels like for somebody to say something and then walk away from them and not hear them out and not hear their response.
CNN shed more light on the meeting, reporting that what was supposed to be an iftar dinner to break the Ramadan fast was changed to a meeting because participants didn't feel comfortable having a celebratory meal while hundreds of thousands in Gaza are on the brink of famine. Honestly, I think many of them are already experiencing it. It's another example of the administration's fraying relationship with the Muslim American community. Other attempts at holding meetings in key states have been hampered by declined invitations, and relationships with important community groups have frayed since the war began. Look, Biden needs the support of Muslim and Arab Americans to win critical swing states like Michigan. But he's literally willing to hurt his own chances at getting reelected, which he claims would lead to the end of American democracy as we know it, just to defend Israel and supply them with more bombs. It's depraved, and he cannot set himself apart from Trump as the decent one when he's funding and greenlighting the annihilation of innocent lives in Gaza, period.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.